Source KCRG TV9, the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance and Hawkeye Area Labor Council present the 2021 Cedar Rapids Mayoral Forum.
Welcome everybody. I'm Doug Newman, the Executive Director at the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. Tonight, we once again join forces with the Hawkeye Area Labor Council and KCRG TV to bring you, our members, a chance to learn more about the Cedar Rapids mayoral candidates. Our partnership tonight provides a direct voice for business and labor to advocate for issues key to the business community, to working people, their families, and our region. We thank both candidates. Thank you so much for being here. We thank both candidates for being here. We thank the audience, both live and online, for being here and tuning in as well. We do have a little bit of a lineup change here tonight. You might notice that we're without Rick Moyle, the Executive Director of Hawkeye Labor Council. Rick is a bit under the weather today and not able to join us in person tonight. In this COVID-conscious world, he thought it was best to stay home. I'm sure he's probably tuned into 9.2 right now, and we are going to ask all of the questions that Rick had prepared to ask. Beth and I are going to do our best to ask those labor-oriented questions. And on behalf of Rick, and we certainly wish him a speedy recovery, I am very honored and happy to be joined here by Beth Malicki, KCRG TV news anchor, and my co-moderator here tonight.
Yeah. Doug, thank you so much. And truly, Rick, we hope you feel better as quickly as possible. We are so happy to have all of you join us tonight for this forum. You know, there were a ton of these forums and debates leading up to the November 2nd election. This is really your only chance to hear from the candidates themselves coming up with the final vote on November 30th, just 2 weeks from tonight. So we do want to share a little bit about our two candidates right now. Amara Andrews. Amara is a mom, a businesswoman, community leader. Originally from California, she's lived and worked in Cedar Rapids with her family for nearly 10 years. And Amara is currently the head of business development and communications for the transportation division of True North Companies here in Cedar Rapids. Thanks for being here, Amara.
Thanks for having me.
And Tiffany O'Donnell. Tiffany is the Chief Executive Officer at Women Lead Change, a Cedar Rapids-based organization with a global presence dedicated to developing and advancing women leaders at all levels. Prior to joining WLC, Tiffany was a 20-year news anchor, spending the last 15 years at CBS 2, Fox 28. Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you.
So here's how this, yes, they're both wonderful, yes. So here's how tonight's debate is going to go. Candidates will each be given 1 minute for their opening statements. Following those opening remarks, we'll be asking questions, taking turns. A couple of them people have submitted from the audience. We're definitely going to get to Rick's questions. And then candidates will be responding, alternating the order that they answer, and we'll help direct that so you don't have to remember who went last. Now, the forum is intended to be a little bit more conversational than what you might be picturing your traditional like presidential or gubernatorial debate. Now, each candidate, though, we do have a timer. We'll get 60 seconds for that initial response. The candidate who answers first will then be given the option to respond to that second candidate's 1 minute response with a 30-second rebuttal. If I said minute, I meant second. And in the spirit of being a bit less formal, we might be asking some follow-up questions or combined questions in some cases, just to switch it up a bit, and really to make sure we're getting clarity on where these women are on the issues so that voters are the best equipped to make a decision 2 weeks from tonight. But we are going to be, first and foremost, fair. So we'll be keeping an eye on the clock, and we'll be letting people know how much time they'll get to respond to something if we go a bit off the cuff. Each candidate then at the end will be getting 1 minute for closing remarks. The forum won't go past 8:30 tonight. We do have the option to end a little bit sooner. Did I get it all?
You got it all.
All right.
If we want to start on script, you get to keep going.
All right. Let's start with those opening statements, and we're trying to do things fairly, so we're going to hit alphabetical order. Amara Andrews, you go first, and you are welcome to speak for 1 minute.
Thank you. With the double A's, I get to go first, huh? Well, thanks so much for having us. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you all and to answer questions. My name's Amara Andrews. I am running for mayor of Cedar Rapids, and I'm running for mayor because the people of Cedar Rapids want change. We saw that on November 2nd. I saw it last summer when we organized the largest movement in Cedar Rapids history after George Floyd was murdered. People want change and people want representation, and that is what I intend to do. I hope to bring a new vision to Cedar Rapids and new leadership. It is time to break from tradition, and that is what I hope to do as mayor of Cedar Rapids. I have said all along when I launched this campaign that I hope to lead us in a progressive direction. And that is not about being a Republican or being a Democrat. Being progressive is about being forward thinking. And that's what I want to do. I want to lead in a way that is forward thinking when it comes to climate change, when it comes to social justice, when it comes... Is the time? Oh.
So, Tiffany, you'll get about 80 seconds. Pardon? You'll get about 80 seconds for the opening. Oh, okay, yeah.
Thanks. Okay, thanks so much. And thanks to you for having me here again tonight. Back on November 2nd, 11,023 of you voted for me in this election. Every vote counts. And by casting that vote, you showed support for somebody who's willing to work with all communities within Cedar Rapids. You showed support for somebody who likes to bring people together and build coalitions, not divide. You voted for somebody who knows the history of Cedar Rapids and the tradition that can be considered maybe a negative, I think is an incredible positive, knowing where we've been and having the vision to move us to where we want to go. You also voted for somebody who has relationships and a network within Cedar Rapids, and maybe even more importantly at this point and where we are in Cedar Rapids, relationships beyond our borders, relationships in Des Moines and elsewhere, so that I can advocate for Cedar Rapids to have a seat at some of the most impactful and important tables to get us where we need to go. And then maybe potentially most important, what I've seen over the last 8 months, you elected on that night, at least 11,023 of you decided that you wanted somebody who was nonpartisan. I am the nonpartisan candidate in this nonpartisan campaign for a nonpartisan position. This is not about party, this is about Cedar Rapids. I have broad support from Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, and I'm going to ask for your vote again on November 30th.
All right. First question, and this will, again, a reminder, the clock there is set at 1 minute. It's really obviously how each of you will get that minute after I ask this question. And the question starts with Tiffany. This job comes with a lot of blame. If you become mayor, you will be stopped at the grocery store. You will be stopped on the street. You will be stopped in your place of employment and get asked about potholes and get asked about tax bills that you don't oversee. This job really is just one vote of 9 on council. It pays less than $40,000 a year. Why would you want this?
On that note, thank you, Beth. Well, as a news anchor, I think you felt some of the things that you're just saying that we're going to feel as mayor. And I have to tell you, if anything prepares you for that willingness and affection for interfacing with the public like that, it is the work that you do and the work that I did for 15 years here in Cedar Rapids. I feel that we are at a critical point in Cedar Rapids. We're at a crossroads, and I'm concerned that we're watching cities around us pass us by. And I'm thrilled for Marion, I'm thrilled for Coralville, I'm thrilled for Hiawatha, but I'm done sitting back on my heels. And that's what prompted me to do this. I'm not a politician, I have no desire to be a politician. I saw an opportunity, and I saw my experience as a news anchor, as the chief executive for the last 7 years of an organization that I've proudly grown in size and scope, to lend my talents to my city. And that's pure and simple why I'm here to do it. I believe I am the right leader at the right time for Cedar Rapids, and I welcome the opportunity to once again interface with the public like that.
Amara, 1 minute.
It's funny that you ask, and I'm sure Tiffany and I both have thought about that on the campaign trail. Like, oh my goodness, do we really want to do this? And the answer is yes. The answer is resoundingly yes. The people of Cedar Rapids deserve a great leader. They deserve someone who can lead by example. They deserve someone who will listen to their voices. They deserve someone who will amplify the voices of of the underserved communities. And so that is really why I'm running. It's to represent the people. I have also said, this campaign, my campaign, is about it's a grassroots movement. I don't have generational ties to Cedar Rapids. I don't come from generational wealth. This campaign is about the people of Cedar Rapids, putting workers, small business owners, our nonprofit community, making those people a priority for the first time in Cedar Rapids. And so that is why I'm running.
Tiffany, you may have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. My grandfather in Sicily was herding goats 2 generations ago. So when we talk about, generational wealth and experience, this is where I come from. I am so proud to be married to Michael O'Donnell, whose family is in the 5th generation here in Cedar Rapids, that came here with the same hopes that my immigrant grandparents came here with. And I think whenever I talk about how long that the O'Donnells have been here, I want people to know that I have deep roots here, that I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to see you at Hy-Vee. I'm going to see you in the next 15 years. I'm going to see you in the next 20 years. I want my kids to come back here, which is one of the primary drivers of me running. So I'm proud to be part of a family that has deep roots here in Cedar Rapids.
Thanks to both of you for those answers. The next question is going to start with Amara. And a reminder perhaps to those people in the virtual audience that are just tuning in that Hawkeye Labor Council was a co-host of tonight's forum. And in the absence of Rick Moyle, who is out ill tonight, we'll be asking some of these questions are ones that Rick otherwise would have asked. So just a reminder to people for that. And I'll certainly lead off here with Amara on one of those. Amara, do you support all public employees' right to collective bargaining? Why or why not?
The answer is yes. I think it's important that workers have the right to organize and that they have the right to organize and negotiate for better wages and for better benefits. I think that is extremely important. If we want to attract people to Cedar Rapids, if we want to retain people in Cedar Rapids, we need to be sure that they have jobs that make a living wage. I also think it's important that workers just have this fundamental right. So I am 100% in support of workers' rights to organize.
And Tiffany, 60
Yeah,
seconds.
absolutely. I completely support workers' rights, collective bargaining. By the same token, I support those who opt to not join a union. But I think that these are processes that are in place. My hope is that everybody, my goal in Cedar Rapids is to have everybody to have a living wage, to have stable, upward mobility, whether it's through collective bargaining or otherwise. But I absolutely support that.
And Amara, any other follow-up? 30 seconds. If you
I don't
want.
really have follow-up.
Okay, all right, great. I'm going to move on with another question. And Aaron, this is the one I warned you about. Let's go 90 seconds on this because it's a multi-parter. Let me set this up first. Tiffany, we're going to start with you on this. President Biden signed a federal infrastructure bill into law yesterday, and I have a couple of questions about it. I'll ask you these questions and get brief responses on each. We'll go up to a total of 90 seconds, and then we'll circle back with the rebuttal or any follow-up comments. So first part of this question, as mayor, would you have advocated for or against passage of the infrastructure bill or stayed out of it entirely?
Oh gosh, I would have advocated for it. I have ideas for it already. I'm bummed that it's, $5 billion. I would have absolutely. Do you want to know what I want to do with it?
I do, but I want to do that
Okay.
third.
All
The
right.
second question is talk a little bit about how. How would have you advocated for it? How might you have gone about trying to make a difference at the federal level?
I think I've said this before in forums. I think it's critical that we have relationships with our elected leaders, regardless of party. I have relationships with Democrats and Republicans in Des Moines and in Washington. And this is where that really comes into play. And it's certainly not that you're going to get your way because you happen to know somebody in Des Moines or Washington, but I believe it makes a difference when you have a relationship with somebody who's advocating for your town, when you can invite somebody to your town and share with them a personal experience about why you want to improve Tower Terrace or why the 8th Avenue Bridge, it's critical that we get that done faster than expected. So I would absolutely utilize my relationships, and where I don't have those relationships, I would lean on places like the Economic Alliance and others to help me get with those people.
And now the third part of that question is, indeed, we will see millions of dollars of additional funding for infrastructure. How would you like to see those dollars spent in Cedar Rapids?
Well, for sure, we've seen a lot about one of the most collaborative efforts we've seen of late is the Tower Terrace project. I definitely hope that we can speed that up. Same with flood protection. Let's make sure the Army Corps knows that, hey, we'd like to go a little faster than we even expected. I think we have to talk about the 8th Avenue Bridge. We know that when we flood, that's a main artery that's, during the floods of 2008, we had one route, we had I-380. So we really need to get 8th Avenue Bridge done sooner than that. And I think we also need to talk about the I-380 in the interchange out by the airport. I mean, we've seen incredible growth out there. That 380 has to expand and improve if we're going to continue to grow as well. As mayor, I would advocate to have somebody on the DOT commission, which we don't have. Cedar Rapids has no representation right now on the DOT commission. So that would also be 380 expansion and improvement.
And Amara, I'll walk you through all three of those so you don't have to remember them all.
Sounds good.
And we'll go just over on 90 seconds to match Tiffany's time. So to start with, as mayor, would you have advocated for or against passage of the infrastructure bill or stayed out of it entirely?
I would have definitely advocated for passage of the infrastructure bill.
And how does a mayor of Cedar Rapids go about that? How do you be influential in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. I think that it is important to work with our legislators. It does not matter what party you belong to. We should all be able to work together to better our state, to better our city. So the notion that because I'm a Democrat, I couldn't work with others is just false. So I would certainly want to encourage our legislators, especially those who voted against it, try to encourage them to think otherwise and to think about what is best for our cities and our state. So a meeting of the minds, going around talking about why it's important to pass the bill, I think is one strategy to certainly help people make the right decision.
And now, knowing that we'll have quite a bit of additional federal money for infrastructure, how would you like to see those dollars spent in Cedar Rapids?
Yeah, so I think our priority should be on flood mitigation. Our current plan to build the flood walls will take 20 years. I think if we had additional funding, we could certainly ramp that up, and I think we need to start focusing on the west side. We also have a number of buildings that are unsafe and not up to code. We need to look carefully at those buildings and think about how to get them to be safe. We also need to look at our bridges, of course, to ensure that they are also safe. So there are a number of ways that we can use the funding to ensure that our roads are safe and that our buildings are safe.
And Tiffany, if you wish, any additional follow-up?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. I agree that we have professional legislators and lawmakers, and they are professionals, and they will work with anybody. I think it's always a challenge when you've been, as I said before, thrown under the bus by a candidate, and then be expected to, be welcomed with open arms, asking for money from them. I think it's a challenge. I think it's a delicate balance that we walk here. So, yeah.
All right. Moving on, this question will start with Amara. This is from somebody out in the community her name is Lori. She lives on the southeast side. She works downtownish. And she said that, what is your perception of the role that neighborhood associations play in city priorities? And what voice or seat at the table would you as mayor be willing to give to neighborhood associations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And through this process, I have spent a lot of time at neighborhood associations, and I think neighborhood associations are incredibly important, and it would behoove the mayor to spend more time with our neighborhood associations. I wish that they had more attendance and that they were more robust. There are certainly some neighborhood associations that are more active than others. So, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for our local leaders, for city government to engage with communities. And so I would want to encourage our neighborhood associations to be more active, certainly utilizing social media and being able to communicate more with the neighbors, I think is important. It's great that our police department usually has, thank you. I can't follow the clock and talk apparently at the same time, so.
No, it is a skill learned over many years and lots of correction. But thank you so much. Tiffany, your response to that question about neighborhood associations.
I look at neighborhood associations almost as a linchpin to our growth. And I say that having run for the last 8 months and spending time within many of our neighborhood associations and really seeing how unique and diverse they all are. And I've also found that however strong the neighborhood association is, that's how strong the neighborhood is. There's a real connection between what they're able to accomplish. The Northwest Neighbors I use as a great example. They had terrific leadership, and no one was going to deny the Northwest Neighbors. And I'd like to see the neighborhoods become the lead in fostering connections. When we talk about violence among our youth, when we talk about people being held accountable, when we talk about fostering community, even emergency management. Let's have that start in our neighborhood associations. And as a city, we can make sure that we support them. We can ask them for their vision. What would they imagine the best version of their neighborhood association? As a city, let's work to support that.
Amara, you're welcome to.
Well, since I was mid-thought as my time ran out, I will just spend my last 30 seconds. So I think our neighborhood associations can do more. They can be more interactive, both with the city, with the police department. It's great that the police department and there's usually a city staff person there at the neighborhood associations, but it's more about just kind of going over data. It would be great to have more interaction, and then it would also be great for our neighborhood associations to interact with each other and to interact with the mayor.
This next question is from Rick Moyle with Hawkeye Area Labor. This will go to Tiffany first. So as mayor, would you encourage negotiators to discuss and negotiate over all permissive subjects and that they are included in final contracts? I can give you a little bit of clarity.
Thank you.
So a number of years ago under Governor Branstad, he changed the ability for public unions to collectively bargain on a whole range of issues, really winnowed it down so that unions can really only negotiate on bare bones, talking base pay. And it did other things. I'm just simplifying. I'm giving you the Twitter answer.
Thank you for that. And I'll try and answer it as best I can, not being inside our city government. But I can tell you as mayor, what I've learned from talking with people inside our city government, our fellow council members, I've talked to all of them as well as many directors within the city. I wouldn't change a thing. The way that the city bargains. I think that there are certain parameters that the law puts upon these negotiations, and from what I understand is our city has, in good faith, gone beyond that, and I would see no reason to change that.
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So I'm going to read it because it's very specific, and then I can give it a little nuance if that's helpful. Would you encourage negotiators to discuss and negotiate over all permissive subjects and that they're included in final contracts? Meaning discuss more than what the bare minimum that the law allows.
I would encourage negotiators to cover all permissive subjects, and I would defer to our unions and to our workers to know what needs to be negotiated and what needs to be included. So I would encourage that we negotiate over as many subjects as is deemed reasonable by our unions and by our workforce.
Tiffany, 30 seconds if you want it. All right.
Okay, thank you. The next question starts with Amara. I'm going to move from the federal legislative question to a state legislative question. What would be your number one priority lobbying the state legislature? What steps will you take to advocate for Cedar Rapids priorities before the legislature and the governor?
Wow, there are There are a lot of things. So I think there have been a number of rules that have been decided on in recent history that I would personally like to see changed. One is with respect to diversity and the ability for the city to have diversity training and for diversity to be taught in schools, for history, holistic history that includes many cultures, for that to be able to be taught in schools is one thing that I think needs to be changed, and that I would lobby for that change. I would also like to see more power given back to the local government. So there are many rules that really tie the hands of us locally, and I would like to see those changed as well.
Tiffany, 60 seconds on your priorities in front of the state legislature.
Yeah, if I have to choose just one.
The question says one.
One, okay. So one, I would say that impacts us, and I hear about it every day as I'm running for mayor, is workforce. We have a real workforce challenge, and we have a need to upskill the workers that are here currently. We have an opportunity to, with Future Ready Iowa, for example, the state has some incredible programs with the IEDA and workforce development to get inside of our schools for apprenticeship programs and endorsements and certifications, so that we can help help our schools fund programs that allow us to graduate our students with certifications and skills to get a job in the workforce immediately. I just left New Boco and listened to a young man talk about his experience as a senior in high school at Jefferson High School in his Delta V training, and he had an internship at Involta and may end up working at Involta after all is said and done. This is through Delta V. There are so many pathways to success. I'd like to help support our schools in making sure our kids can stay here when they graduate.
Amara, another 30 seconds for follow-up if you'd like.
I'm confused. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, again, on state legislative priorities, the question specifically was your number one priority lobbying the state legislature.
Okay. I wasn't clear on what you're lobbying the legislature for.
Want more support. I will lobby for more support.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. This next question will start with Tiffany. There's been quite a bit of turnover at the senior city staff this year. I just think of Jen Winter, Jasmine Almayed, Matt Meyer, the parks director, the city attorney. And the city manager hires for many of those positions, often with the advice and consent of the mayor and council. So what are your views on hiring, on building the city team, and what role does the part-time mayor have in securing these top positions?
You know, every day for the last 7 years, it's been my mission to make sure that we have diversity in leadership. And I say that not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the smart thing to do. And I feel like when I talk about my experience leading me up to this spot, I feel incredibly fortunate that I can bring this experience to city government. Understanding that we want to have a lot of different voices represented. Certainly we want a diverse hiring panel. We want to make sure that we bring a lot of different voices to the table, ultimately choosing the best person for the job, but being mindful of the many different ways that we find people out there, and having one central vision in terms of the type of people that we're looking for. I think it's important to be in lockstep with, if we want an innovator, you know, what types of experiences do we want to bring to the table, and then make sure that we are mindful in how we're finding these candidates and how we're hiring these candidates.
I'm just going to repeat the last part of the question because I think I rambled a little bit. For you, Amara, discuss your views on hiring and on building the city team and what role a mayor would or could play.
Say that one more time.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Discuss your views on hiring and on building the city team and what role a mayor would or could play.
Yeah, so I think the mayor plays an important role. The mayor plays the role that where we are establishing, I would be establishing the vision for council and for the city. And so it is within this vision that we would be hiring people that can fulfill the vision. And so it's important that we are looking to hire people that understand that. It is also important that we are looking to hire people that reflect the diversity that is Cedar Rapids. And right now, our city staff is not very diverse. And so that would be an important part of this process as we look to fill open positions. But I think the mayor is important in sort of setting the tone, the vision, and the culture. And so when we talk about, bringing people on, a big part of HR and hiring talent is hiring people that fit in the culture of the organization. And in this case, the organization is Cedar Rapids. So I think that the mayor plays an important role in that.
Tiffany, you're welcome to have 30-ish seconds.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do think it is important to remind people the job of a part-time mayor. And we do really set the tone. What we say is important, what matters to us. It's our job then to convey the importance to our fellow council members. And then, of course, bring it to our city manager and staff. And I would, again, welcome the opportunity to work with our DEI manager, Elizabeth Book, who I am so fortunate to have worked with her during her time at Collins at Women Lead Change. So working in lockstep with the DEI manager to make sure we are meeting our goals.
Sort of a follow-up to that question, and you'll get a full 60 seconds to respond to this. Many of us sit on boards of directors. The most important thing a nonprofit board does is choose the executive director. The most important thing a school board does is choose or remove the superintendent of schools. So in this form of government, the most important thing that the 9 members of council does is hire, retain, or fire the city manager. How would you shape the relationship with Jeff Pomerantz, who is a highly compensated employee, $340-ish thousand all told, to ensure that that salary is justified from a taxpayer's perspective, but also that you're in lockstep on the city's future? And I'm going to start with Amara.
Yeah, well, Jeff Pomerantz has a huge job. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is the chief operating officer of Cedar Rapids, and so that is why he is compensated the way that he is. And I think relying on Jeff's experience, which he has a ton, is important. It also is important that Jeff understands the vision that we put forth as mayor, and that city council agrees is where we want to move Cedar Rapids. So I think Jeff does have a lot of responsibility, and holding him accountable for the decisions that he makes and for the decisions that the people he manages makes is important. We want to be sure that he is following the vision and that he is that he's acting upon it for sure. I mean, I trust Jeff, and I think that he's done a great job as our city manager.
Tiffany?
Yeah, I've often said that I feel that Jeff Pomerantz may be former Mayor Ron Corbett's best legacy. Bringing Jeff Pomerantz in post-floods when we needed it the most was a game changer for us. I will also say I look forward to working side by side with Jeff. I've known him since he was here, practically knew him from West Des Moines. Mm-hmm. I look forward to working with him. I will say that I think the mayor is best when she works closely with the city manager, and I think the city manager is best working closely with the mayor. I think there is a give and take, there is a push and a pull. I have all kinds of things I'm anxious to talk to Jeff about as I've been basically mining information for the last 8 months, the good, the bad, the challenges and the opportunities. And I think being able to share that with Jeff's always been willing to listen, and no one wants to be better than him. No one wants Cedar Rapids to be better than Jeff Pomerantz. So I just look forward to pushing each other side by side.
It's not awkward at all because he's like right there. Hey, Jeff.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I didn't notice.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. We're going to start with Amara on this question, and certainly both of you have already answered part of this. It's a question about collective bargaining. I do think this question is really important to Hawkeye labor, and this is a This is a bigger picture question. Again, even if you've already answered part of it, I'd ask you to reflect again on this question. Getting bigger than the permissive topics, but really about collective bargaining in general. What would you do as mayor to ensure that all public sector collective bargaining contracts are negotiated in good faith by the city? Amara.
I would encourage. I encourage the use of project labor agreement. I would encourage the use of project labor agreements wherever possible. I think it is important. One thing that we can do as a city would be to incentivize businesses to use project labor agreements. So we could, as a city, provide incentives, tax incentives, TIFs, to companies who are willing to do that, to use project labor agreements. As a city, I think it's important that we do what we can to protect workers' rights and protect workers' rights to negotiate.
Yeah, thank you. Tiffany.
Can you repeat the question?
Yep. What would you do as mayor to ensure that all public sector collective bargaining contracts are negotiated in good faith by the city?
I think if as mayor I tell you I'm committed to making sure that they're all in good faith, then that's about as far as I can go.
Yeah, fair enough. Amara?
Yeah,
30
and so
seconds.
I just would add, now that I hear the question back again, we need to be sure that we are listening to our workers and to our unions. As they make recommendations, we need to listen to that, and we need to take heed and understand that they know what's best. The unions know what's best for their workers. So where at all possible, I think we need to defer to their judgment and trust that trust their ability to negotiate.
Very good, thank you. So, Tiffany, this one starts with you. I get almost a daily update on this now, but we have already resettled several Afghan refugees right here in Cedar Rapids. More than 200 are expected to resettle here over some period of time. What would be your plan to incorporate them into the community?
I have so much respect for the Catherine McCauley Center, and having visited there and toured with them and met some of their teachers and students and the work that they're doing with the immigrants who are here already. And what I see when I have met with some of those immigrants is, when I talk about my grandfather coming here from Italy, that hope and optimism, I find it incredibly encouraging for us. And as a mayor who is mindful about making sure that we have a diverse and interesting and welcoming community, I welcome them. I welcome their support. I welcome their optimism. I welcome their willingness to be a part of Cedar Rapids. Taking it a step further with our African community, I've even, connected Ramamuzo with the Intercultural Center with Green State Credit Union to help find ways to get housing for immigrants, knowing that that's our first way to get this first generation set up to fill the generational wealth gap and get housing. So I would continue my commitment to the Afghan refugees as I have with the African immigrants.
Thanks. And Amara, 60 seconds. Again, your plan to incorporate the more than 200 Afghan refugees that are expected to resettle here in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, this is a complicated issue, and certainly ensuring that the Catherine McCauley Foundation has the resources that they need to help our refugee populations is a step. But it is very hard to come to a country, not know the language, not have adequate housing, not have resources, and so it's a dynamic issue, and so we need to think about schooling. We need to think about housing. We need to talk to the refugee population that is here already and understand the problems that they have faced coming into Cedar Rapids and entering the workforce or entering the schools, because it is very difficult. So I would want to ensure that our nonprofits that deal with the refugee populations are adequately funded, but there are alternative ways as well. There are other organizations that can help, and so we really need to look holistically at the problem.
Tiffany, anything to add?
Yeah, I've always been so proud of Iowa's reputation. Governor Bob Ray, some of you probably remember this when he brought the Burmese refugees here, and it became one of his legacies. And not just his legacy, but the willingness of Iowans to welcome these refugees. And between the Mother Mosque and the Catherine McCauley Center and the Intercultural Center, I mentioned Rama earlier, I know they're prepared to support as well. I think we need to wrap our arms around the refugees, the immigrants from all different places, and understand that they are part of Cedar Rapids and they are an incredible opportunity for us to be a part of our community going forward.
Thank you. We'll start with Amara on this question. Cedar Rapids is long known for processing corn, but lately the warehouse business seems to be booming. The FedEx warehouse on the southwest side is set to open next year. The Alro Steel Corps is building a huge warehouse right near the airport. Do you see Cedar Rapids as becoming a warehouse business destination?
Well, not necessarily, although we welcome with open arms businesses who want to come here. And so, what I would like to see is, as the FedExes of the world come and open their warehouses in Cedar Rapids, that they are providing quality jobs with living wages and benefits to the workers that are here. So I think it's great that businesses are coming here. We have land. It is affordable as compared to other places, and I think that we will continue to see warehouses come here and other places. And I think it's a great opportunity for us, as long as we know how to take advantage of it.
Tiffany?
One of the things running a business, running Women Lead Change over the last 7 years, I've learned the importance of paying attention to your environment. And what an opportunity we have upon us. Who would have ever guessed that warehousing? I mean, it seemed like you were surprised even saying it too. But you talk about where we're located strategically, geographically, where we're located. It's why we have CRST and other trucking, Heartland, and all these trucking companies have decided to make Cedar Rapids home. It only makes sense that we would have, warehousing here. And I am all about, certainly not just warehouses, but you look at what comes when you have this type of facility. So I'm excited about that being one piece of an economic development puzzle. I will tell you that when FedEx came here, I heard from one existing business owner who was really upset because, as he said, they're going to take my workers, which again underscores the importance for us to grow our workforce here in Cedar Rapids. If we want to grow business, warehouses, and otherwise, we got to make sure we have people to fill those jobs.
Mara, you're welcome to respond.
I don't have anything further. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. This is a question from Rick, and we'll start with Tiffany this time. What steps would you take to ensure local workers and contractors are used on local public projects?
Oh gosh. I am, first and foremost, buy local, hire local, thumb on the scale for local. And one of the, I've heard literally in the last 2 weeks, I've heard about, our city hiring a city attorney using an out-of-state firm, search firm. I've heard about a marketing company marketing our city based out of Kansas City, which is just disheartening to me. Because I know these companies that we have here, I know we have opportunity to buy local, hire local, thumb on the scale for local. And as mayor, what I would encourage is on every agenda, when we are purchasing, when we decide to use a company or organization that is not local, I think the council deserves to know why. There may be real reasons for it. I'm not saying there wouldn't be, but I think the council needs to be brought to the council's attention so that we understand why. And then we can go back and say, so maybe that person wasn't the right company for the job, but could they have been? That's when I say thumb on the scale. Let's make sure we're doing our best to grow Cedar Rapids by Cedar Rapidians.
Mara?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What steps would you take to ensure local workers and contractors are used on local public projects?
So on local public projects, we should be using local contractors. There are some laws that may prevent that, like lowest bidder laws, and we need to think long and hard about whether that makes sense. I think we should focus on local over lowest bidder, for example. I think outside of that, as we are looking at development projects, we should focus on local, and we should provide incentives for companies who are going to use local developers, local workers. So as we are contracting with developers, we could provide incentives to developers who use local. I think it's incredibly important for our workers, for our companies, that we invest in one another and not go outside of Cedar Rapids.
Do I get a follow-up? One of the things that I think is really interesting, as voters voted to extend the local option sales tax, I know there are state laws that require us to take the lowest bidder. I would love to go back and take a look, since we have so much road work, under our belts, so to speak, that I'd love to see if those lowest bidders actually were the lowest bidders. I've heard so many stories about, change orders, and they may have what started off as the lowest bidder ultimately didn't end up being the lowest bidder. I'd love to get that data. I'd love to find out, how that worked out in the end, and then maybe make a case at the state level to say, hey, is there something we can do? We have this data that shows lowest bidder actually for the city of Cedar Rapids wasn't ultimately the lowest bidder.
Okay, thank you. Amara, we're going to start with you. Both of you have already reflected on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask another workforce question. If my team would let me, I would have done the whole 90 minutes on workforce. It's that important to what we are trying to accomplish right now. So it's a pretty simple question, but I do want to spend another question and another opportunity for both of you to respond on simply what is your plan to recruit people to live and work here? Amara, we'll start with you, 60 seconds.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've talked about this a lot. I've talked about my past, in my past life, running a campaign in Champaign, Illinois, to retain our talent, there, that it was about not only economic development, but also telling the story about how great the city is, and we need to do something similar here. But also, when you think about what attracts you to an area, are good schools. What attracts you to an area are affordable homes. What attracts you to an area are great jobs, diversity, sustainability. These are things that attract people now to cities, and these are things that we can certainly improve. So I think there's a robust plan. There's no silver bullet, but starting with schools and jobs and housing would be a first step.
Tiffany?
I've said the catalyst for me running for mayor were my two daughters, who both don't live in Cedar Rapids anymore, and I want them to want to come back here. So I use my girls as sort of my true north. And I feel like we have to do a lot of things at one time here. If we want to recruit, we want to keep people here, first of all, we got to be a place they don't want to leave, and we have to be a place that new workforce wants to come. And that certainly means amenities, opportunities, and housing. We've got to make sure, I talk a lot about bringing our downtown back to life. We have such an opportunity. It's an opportunity with the vacancies to reimagine what multi-use looks like downtown, redevelop our downtown, invest in those neighborhoods as unique neighborhoods in their own, as districts around us, and that waterfront. Let's do something on the water as well as on both sides of the water. We have such an opportunity from a recreation and amenity standpoint. And then just underscoring again the opportunities here with jobs. We got to have jobs and opportunity for people to want to come here. And that may mean utilizing this new economy where we say, go ahead and live here and work in Manhattan. We can get creative in how we recruit new people.
And Amara, 30 more seconds for any additional thoughts on how to recruit people to live and work here.
Yeah, I think we need to do a better job telling the story of how great Cedar Rapids is. Cedar Rapids with the river running through downtown, Cedar Rapids with robust trades, Cedar Rapids with our diversity. There is a story to be told. It just hasn't been told yet. So I think once we tell the story, people will come, but also there are improvements that we need to make. It's certainly when it comes to sustainability, jobs, housing, diversity, and those things I mentioned earlier.
This next question, start with Tiffany. The homeless situation has grown in Cedar Rapids. They do that census once a year, and the numbers have been tracking upward. Lynn County is developing a permanent overflow shelter, obviously needed, but doesn't necessarily address root causes when it comes to homelessness. What do you think would work?
And thanks for asking that, because you don't have to look very far but outside our windows here at the Public Library to see Green Square Park. And as Cedar Rapidians, if you haven't been down to Green Square Park at 7 o'clock in the morning or even 7 o'clock at night, you owe it to yourself to do that, because your eyes will be wide open to that. Having kids growing up in the Erskine-McKinley-Wash district, I can tell you there were kids who are homeless, too many of them. We have a problem here, and to address your question, Beth, the root is where I focus. I think we need a tiered approach, because there are so many different variables that contribute to someone being homeless. I'm all about a housing first strategy. You know, how do we, rather than use the overflow shelters and have the need for the overfill shelters, how do we make sure that we get adequate housing for people first and the resources for them to be successful on their own? There are addiction issues, there are mental health issues. There are multiple layers. Willis Stady does a terrific job, but as a city, I feel like we really need to tackle this, and it's more than Willis Stady. As a city, we have to commit to being better.
Amara, 1 minute.
Yeah, so I am really encouraged that the county has purchased a building and is working with the city to open a shelter to address the need of our increasing homeless population. And thinking about the cause of homelessness is really, it also is a dynamic problem. I mean, we have to look at a number of factors, including mental health. We have to look at our affordable housing and how there are so many barriers to entry. And if you think about a family who loses their home, the ability to get back into a home is so difficult. I mean, the wait for affordable housing in some instances is 3 years. So having some sort of housing option between, affordable housing and homelessness, that's where we're missing the mark. There's this gap in housing that we need to figure out. We need some sort of housing for people who are going from homelessness to being able to pay their rent. That is one problem, and we need a lot more affordable housing as well.
Give you a little room to breathe here.
Sure. No, and at Women Lead Change, we unfortunately see a lot of women that get stuck in a hamster wheel of despair. Especially women who have children and responsibilities at home that make it difficult for them. Childcare, that's a whole other forum, by the way. We could have a forum on childcare. But I think the city can also incentivize local businesses to utilize, I say women because that's the lens through which I view the world at Women Lead Change. And we've actually had people work for us from Waypoint that are looking to get some skills just to get them into that next job so they can be independent and get their own home. So I think that's a multi-tiered approach that we could certainly lean on our private business to help us with as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Amara, this question starts with you. Again, in a forum co-hosted by Hawkeye Labor, we want to hit on some of these labor issues that are really important. Seniority is the cornerstone of many public employee contracts, and it really reflects a belief that the longer an employee stays, the more valuable they become. Do you support seniority rights on issues like wages, promotions, and layoffs?
Yeah, I do, and this question came up in the last forum, and I do support seniority. After speaking with the folks at AFSCME and speaking with other workers, the importance of seniority is it's paramount. So we need to reward workers who stay with a company, and because those workers give so much back. So I think seniority is very important, and I do support it.
Tiffany, 60 seconds.
I think it's a factor. You look at how quickly our world is changing today, how our workplaces are changing, how technology is changing. I think someone who has seniority in an organization has innately the skills and the historical knowledge that can benefit an organization, and it's worth the time and the interest of the organization to do what they can to keep somebody who has those types of skills to support them. I don't think it should be a given. I think it's a factor, but I don't think it should be automatic.
And Amara, any follow-up to that? 30 seconds if you'd like.
Just that, again, I do support seniority. When somebody has been with a company for a very long time, who is working for a very long time, they should be given opportunity, for sure.
Very good. Tiffany, this one starts with you. I want to ask you about your dreams for Cedar Rapids, particularly, and I'm gonna be specific about this, to make it things that might be achievable in one term as mayor. What are 2 amenities you would like to see Cedar Rapids have completed over the next 4 years?
Well, we have a downtown that is a shell of itself. So the downtown is ripe with opportunity for businesses of all kinds. Not just bars and restaurants, but shops and boutiques, as well as a variety of housing, accessible, market rate, and otherwise. I think we could make real steps in reimagining what our downtown looks like. I also believe we have an opportunity. I look at the West Side as an incredible opportunity here. We know that we just got the great news that flood protection on the West Side is going to be pushed up to maybe 3 years. That is great news for development. Time Check is poised to just explode with development, whether it be housing, diverse housing there, or whether it be some entertainment and recreation there. And I do believe we will see in 4 years tremendous and exciting growth on the West Side.
And Amara, 60 seconds for 2 amenities that you would love to see completed within the 4 years of your first mayoral term.
So one would be, I really am, inclusivity is very important to me. So I would like to see more mixed use housing structures. Imagine structures where you can buy a condo, you can rent an apartment, or there might be affordable housing. That is one thing that I would like to see. I think it would make our city more interesting and more diverse. And then the other is not necessarily an amenity, but I would like to see us be much more sustainable and green. So as we are developing, as we are looking to commercial developments, as we're looking at residential developments, that we consider the climate, and that we consider making sustainable buildings, LEED certified buildings, even homes. So that would be something that I think we could achieve. We could certainly move towards a more green economy and more green living.
And Tiffany, 30 seconds for any follow-up.
Yeah, an amenity is a walkable, bikeable neighborhood and a walkable, bikeable city. And since day one of this campaign, that's been one of my goals, to have unique, distinct neighborhoods surrounding a vibrant city center, all walkable, bikeable within 15 minutes. And that is consistent with our climate action plan. And I couldn't be more excited that the city has committed to this. And I feel like when I talk about the workforce of the future, that's an amenity that they're looking for.
Amara, this next question will start with you. Partisanship has been an issue in this race. Do you believe knowing whether someone is red or blue, leans left or right, can help voters predict a mayor's priorities in office? And a sub to that, in your words, how would you describe your politics?
So I don't know that anything can be predicted these days, but I do think that someone's party speaks to their values and speaks to the policies that they will advocate for or against. So in that respect, I think party is important as it speaks to, like I said, to our values. What was the second part of your question?
Sure. How would you describe your politics?
So my politics, and I said this, I think I said this in my opening, I consider myself to be progressive. I consider myself to be very forward thinking when it comes to issues of social justice and climate change, when it comes to thinking about our housing, as I have just talked about, building housing that is LEED certified. So these are progressive ideas, and so that's how I would describe my politics.
And Tiffany, again, do you believe knowing someone's politics can help you protect that person's priorities in the mayor's office? And then the sub, in your words, how would you describe your politics?
I think if we're talking congressional, federal, state elections, that matters. I think when we're talking about a mayor's position, or certainly in this form of government, the city council, I think there have been moments in my 20 years here, I couldn't tell you what party certain council members belong to. I mean, Cedar Rapids it's a nonpartisan setup here. The mayor is a nonpartisan position. The council is nonpartisan. They work as a team to do what's best for Cedar Rapids. As for my politics, I was the only candidate who checked the box. You don't even have to check the box, but I checked the Republican box because I'm a registered Republican. So when I ran for a nonpartisan position, I thought that why wouldn't I check that box? But let me tell you what that means to me. Being a Republican to me means small government. It means government closest to the people, works best. I have supported, not just through my words, but actions, people from all different parties. I vote for the person, not the politics.
A response for 30?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I think in terms of local politics and local office, party also does matter, because there are policies that influence us at a local level where you might be able to say, because she's a Democrat, she's going to do one thing, because she's a Republican, she's going to vote or think a certain way. If you think about, masks, for example, think about how the different parties respond to the COVID pandemic. Think about how different parties may respond to social justice issues. So that is why party is relevant at a local level.
Okay, thanks to both of you for the answers on that question. Next question starts with Tiffany. Tiffany, how do you plan to involve residents, particularly the business community, in your decision-making process?
I think relationships are key, and it's frankly, one of my strengths, and it's one of the reasons I believe that I'm the right mayor at the right time. Having relationships, through Women Lead Change, I am in and out of our cities and frankly our state's most successful organizations. I have relationships inside these companies, which is critical when a company may be making a decision to move elsewhere. I think it'll be a priority for me day one to make sure that I have a schedule, that I have meetings set up regularly with the valued businesses that have chose to make Cedar Rapids home. This cannot be a happenstance. We have to be incredibly, and I will be incredibly intentional about letting these organizations know that they are valued first and foremost. We wrap our arms around those who are here. A lot of times we can be tempted by the next shiny object, and we got to look for shiny objects. I will be extremely intentional in being inside all of these companies, whether they're long-standing here or some of our newest, startups. I think that's one of the mayor's biggest jobs in this form of government.
Amara, 60 seconds for you. How do you plan to involve residents, and how do you plan to involve the business community in your decision-making process?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I have experience certainly organizing, as I've talked about this campaign being a grassroots movement, and last summer you saw the result of organizing a grassroots movement. So, I am the type of leader who is going to be on the streets with the people of Cedar Rapids. It's how we were successful last summer, and it's how I've been successful so far with this campaign. So I believe, we need more town halls. We need town halls in every quadrant of the city to listen to the voices of the people of Cedar Rapids. My campaign, as I have said from the beginning, is about putting people first, and that is what I intend to do as mayor. It is important that we listen to the voices of all of Cedar Rapidians, but with a special eye to those who have been disenfranchised, those who have been ignored. Those are the voices that I would like to amplify as a leader.
Let me touch on the people part, because I was really focused on business in my first response. Everything I've learned about being mayor and what matters about being mayor, I've learned talking to people in Cedar Rapids. Let me just say that. I have knocked on hundreds of doors. I feel like being a news anchor and advocating for viewers for 15 years, this is where I learned everything. And I feel that, again, when you talk about the role of a mayor in this form of government, it is, if you think you saw me a lot out there running for mayor, you'll see me more as mayor. I think that is a critical piece of the way we've set up this part-time mayor position. It's critical that I think it's important that I meet people, the mayor meets people where they are, as well as invites them to opportunities to share, whether it's a town hall or separate meetings away from a city council meeting with a handful of city council members and not everybody, so we don't break rules, but really encourage that dialogue.
Amara, this next question will start with you. After the debacle that was Nubo Evolve, the Cedar Rapids Convention and Visitors Bureau collapsed, and the city, as you know, has taken on those duties. Should that entity be reborn as a separate thing, separate nonprofit, or stay under the umbrella of local government? The Convention and Visitors Bureau.
So I am not opposed to it staying within local government. I think what we saw happen with Nubo Evolve was it was disastrous. And I like to lead with data. So doing market research before making decisions like that would be important. And so keeping that within the city, where we can ensure there are checks and balances and there are people being responsible and making the right decision, I think for now makes sense. If we are to move to an entity outside of the city, we would need to be very careful, and we would need to be sure that there are, like I said, checks and balances and people making decisions that make sense for our city. I think Nubo Evolve did not make sense for our city.
Tiffany?
Tourism is such a part of my vision for Cedar Rapids that selfishly, I wouldn't want to give that up. I think the city needs to be a part of that conversation. When we talk about becoming a welcoming city and working lockstep with Julie Stowe at the Tourism Bureau to make sure that happens, these are part of the city's overall vision. So I think the city, if we're going to expect to be partners, I think we owe it to ourselves and to tourism to continue to be under the same umbrella. Whether that is always the case, I don't know that, but I think at this point, when I think about my ideas for Cedar Rapids and what we want to do, I think we need to be under the same umbrella.
Mara, any follow-up?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Oh.
Do I have this? Is that me?
Oh, that is you.
It's all good.
You're good.
We're incorporating Rick. He is still with us, he's just not here. And this is one of his questions. This will start with Tiffany. Where do you stand on privatization of municipal utilities? Municipal services. So I'm going to give you an example, and Jeff, do this if I'm giving a bad example. City water, city trash, wastewater. What happens when you flush? Instead of the city sending you a bill, should Malicki and Newman Incorporated privatize that city municipal utility?
Golf courses have been talked about in Cedar Rapids as
A
well.
less gross example. Thank you.
No. And I'm being perfectly honest, I have not thought through this, so just bear with me here. When I think about the duties of a city and the responsibility to a city where people pay taxes, there are things like trash, there are things like wastewater that I consider a part of the responsibilities of living in a city. I think there is also a responsibility for a city to provide recreation and make sure that amenities like a golf course are accessible to a variety of members in the community. So as it stands right now, I think the city, if we're going to collect taxes from people, we owe it to them to deliver on those services.
Mara?
Yeah, the concern with privatization would be cost to the citizens of Cedar Rapids. And so, you know, keeping these services within the city makes sense to be able to keep the cost down for our citizens, if in fact that is what is happening. I believe that, you know, there are certain fundamental things that people should have access to: electricity, water. These are the things that we should be able to provide at a low cost to folks in Cedar Rapids. So to the extent that we can do that, we should.
Any follow-up?
You know, this highlights, though, and I'm being extremely honest when I say I haven't talked through this. When I look at the type of leader that I am a leader who fully admits regularly that I don't have the answers. I mean, moving from a news anchor to a CEO position 7 years ago, the only thing that got me through was that I knew that I had the ability to figure things out, and if I couldn't figure them out, I had the ability to find people who did. And I will tell you, that is how I will approach being a leader of this city. I'm not going to have all the answers. And I hope that voters wouldn't expect me to have all the answers, and frankly wouldn't want me to have all the answers. Just know that I'm open to finding out the best way forward by asking those who are way smarter than I, whatever the issue may be.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, we're an hour and 10 minutes into this, so no more than 20 minutes left. We'll maybe pick and choose a couple more questions, because we're not going to get through all the questions that were submitted. I want to ask this question. First of all, I commend both of you again for running for office, for being here, but also for the civil tone of tonight's forum. We at the Economic Alliance have a plank in our legislative agenda that talks about civility and bipartisanship, and we do try to call out examples. We try to call out good examples primarily about just good debate, and I think we've had a great debate on the issues tonight, and I really appreciate that. And to that end, I'm going to ask a little bit of a freelance question here that you sometimes hear asked in forums. And Amara, I'm going to start with you. You've been campaigning against and competing against Tiffany now for many months. But on the positive side, what do you admire about Tiffany?
Well, there is lots to admire about Tiffany as she looks at me. You know, I think a lot of people do know this, but many maybe don't. Tiffany and I live in the same neighborhood, and we have known each other. You were maybe one of the first group of people that I met in Cedar Rapids. And, you know, I remember once having a conversation with Tiffany, telling her about some frustrations that I was having. And she said, you know, I know somebody that you should meet who can maybe help you get connected. And so I appreciate that about Tiffany. She's talked a lot about her relationships, and one of the benefits of having so many relationships is that she can make those connections. So that is something I certainly admire and have benefited from personally.
And Tiffany, same question to you. We work so hard in campaigns to try to differentiate the candidates and to show where you might differ on some issues. But talk to us about something that you admire about Amara.
You know, one thing that I've always admired about Amara is her candor, which I think you've seen. I appreciate people that I don't have to wonder what they're thinking. I always say I'm not that smart to decode. I could have conversations with Amara and she was going to tell me what she thought. And I appreciate that in someone. I also appreciate Amara's passion for her beliefs. We may differ in how we feel about issues, but no one will ever accuse Amara of not being passionate about what she believes in.
Appreciate
Thanks.
that.
And I think it's fair without a follow-up on that one, so I'll turn it back to you, Beth.
All right, okay. Whoopity bop bop. I'm going to steal one of your questions. Is that okay? All right. What would be your number one priority, and we'll start with Amara here, if elected mayor, numero uno?
Yeah, and I have said this, and it has not changed. The number one priority is recovery. Recovery from the floods, recovery from derecho. Now that we have some federal funding, we could really boost our flood mitigation efforts and get our flood wall built, particularly working on the west side. In terms of derecho, as I have walked through the neighborhoods, there are still so many people suffering, and so helping people to recover from derecho, getting our tree stumps. I can't tell you how many people have complained about the tree stumps out in front of their lawns, getting the tree stumps up and getting our replanting efforts moved faster. We have started, but there is more that we can do there. So, dusting off some, oh shoot. Okay, I'll come back at my 30 seconds.
You'll get rebuttal, yeah.
I talk a lot about fix and finish. We got to fix what's broken and finish the cleanup. And so certainly that means our streets. It means getting our flood protection done quicker than ever, because we know it's not whether if it'll happen, flooding will happen again. First and foremost, though, I want to talk about derecho recovery. And I'm so grateful that we have programs like Relief, where we're going to replant and we're going to make sure that our tree canopy is there for generations to come. I, however, am focused on the people. I met with, some of you may have read about Kimmy Schmedeke in the Washington Post, 2 articles on the Washington Post about this woman who was struggling to get any support from FEMA. I met with Kimmy. Kimmy hadn't heard from anybody from the city. Kimmy needs help, and there's a lot of Kimmys out there. When you go door to door, some of us may have been able to move on. There are a lot of people who haven't. So I would move to have one person at the city held accountable for recovery. We could talk about what that looks like, and then I would expect having a dashboard at our council meetings to see just where we are. I'm all about property, but I'm focused on the people recovering from derecho first.
30 seconds, Amara.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, dusting off programs like Neighborhood Housing Corporation, where we are providing people with resources to fix their homes where that is necessary. And then we also need to look at our small businesses who are still struggling from, not only from derecho, but from COVID. So recovery. There is so much that we have yet to do and that we have yet to accomplish in terms of getting our city back to where it was so that we can move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Maliki, I'm going to steal one of yours back.
Now we're
so
even.
Game on. This is actually my favorite question, and I wanted the chance to ask this, and I think it might be, it's an interesting question. I'm curious about the answers as well. Tiffany, we'll start, I think it's your turn. We'll start with you on this. Des Moines used to have a election system with runoff elections, and they got rid of it. They saved the taxpayers $85,000 and the top 2 candidates in the general election 30 days of grief by not having a runoff election. I want to ask you here halfway through your 4 weeks in a runoff election, if you think this runoff election is a good use of taxpayer dollars, or whether we should look at this electoral system.
Well, I'm always about looking at ways to improve, and I can tell you, unfortunately, the runoff does cost taxpayers. It also costs candidates. And that's a conversation we can have about the process and how it's offensive, what it costs to run for a local election. I feel like having the system where we have a runoff, one of the benefits of it is it does encourage people to be a part of it. And I felt like if we have a primary system, it would become partisan. It would discourage more people from being a part of this process. So while it hasn't been particularly fun and it has been expensive, I don't have a better plan right now, because I do value being able to have many voices step up to be mayor.
And Amara, your thoughts on this runoff election system?
Well, I'd have to be in favor of it, right? I wouldn't be here otherwise. So, I think we need to do everything that we can. If it costs $80,000, $100,000 to ensure that people have the opportunity to vote. And my fear in removing the runoff is just that it disenfranchises folks in a way, and I am certainly not in favor of that. So, giving folks an opportunity to vote for the top two candidates, I think makes sense. I was asked in a previous forum about having a primary, and I hadn't really thought about that. This is how things operate in Cedar Rapids, and it seems to work well. But it is, maybe it's something that should be considered in the future. I don't have an opinion there.
I will tell you, I do have just a couple of ideas. I talked about the price of running for mayor, the cost of running for mayor, the amount of forums as candidates that we took part in without any real structure. I would recommend, when this is all said and done, that we create some type of an ad hoc committee, maybe a commission, that could determine what best practices would be. Certainly not legally binding, but is there a recommended amount? Is there a recommended number of forums that candidates can agree to participate in? I do think we could make this a better experience for those who come after us.
All right. This question, we'll start with Amara. Voters overwhelmingly said yes to 10 more years of paving for progress. So as you drive around Cedar Rapids, which roads would you suggest get tackled first?
Well, we have engineers that make those decisions, thankfully, but I think we do need to make sure that our plan to repave and fix our roads is equitable, and that we are looking at both sides of the river, that we are looking in all of our neighborhoods, because there do seem to be some neighborhoods that continue year over year to get overlooked. I think we also need to look at our communication plan. So I think what is important, because the perception is that it is unfair, the perception is that it is disorganized, the way that we are going about repaving. And so we need to communicate out the reasons that we are focusing on certain streets, the reasons that we are doing this or that. So many people are really left in the dark there.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Yeah, I think it is hard to determine. I can tell you the roads that I drive on every day that are terrible, and everybody I talk to in other neighborhoods has a road that they drive on that's terrible, which is why I'm thrilled that we did go ahead and extend that local option sales tax. What I'd like to see for this next 10 is a real commitment to our neighborhoods. We've seen some significant work done to our arterial roads and our major roads. It's the neighborhood's turn. And add to that, I think it's imperative that the citizens have a way to understand a timeline. The city has this really great app. If you haven't tried it yet, try the Cedar Rapids app. And it does give you an idea of what's being worked on and where and what types of work that's being done. It gets very specific. What it doesn't have is a timeline, though. And I don't think we can make those a binding timeline, but I know it sure would help a lot of folks if they had an idea when their road was going to be completed. They might not be happy about it, but they might at least have an idea of when to expect it.
Amara, 30 seconds.
So to finish my thought, I think communication is key. When you go to other cities, you will see big signs that say, road construction from this date to this date. We need to find a way to better communicate our plans to the citizens of Cedar Rapids. We all pay our utility bills. We could certainly use those to communicate. There are apps, we can do push notifications. I think we need a better way to communicate our plans, not just with roads and infrastructure, but with all things.
I'm going to sneak in one last lighthearted, fun question, and then we'll go to closing statements. Tiffany, I want to start with you on this, and maybe just an opportunity for voters to get to know a personal side of both candidates a little bit better. I'm just curious, where are your favorite places to go in town? What do you and your husband like to? Where are your favorite places to go? What are your favorite things to do? Let's just end on a light note.
Oh wow! Well, my favorite place to go is my parents' front porch. And I'm not saying that just because they're here, but for sure. And then the other favorite place would be my sister's back porch. I have a really close family, and I talked about being, the granddaughter of immigrants, and family's everything to us. So the best restaurant is at my mom's house or my sister's house. I will say if I go out, I do love the Lighthouse. It's right down the street. Steven and his crew are always so nice to us. I have a lot of restaurant haunts, but if I had to pick, I'd have to say my parents and my sister's house.
Very good. Amara, thoughts on favorite places to go?
Yeah, favorite places to go and favorite things to do in Cedar Rapids. Well, you may guess, I am incredibly competitive, and so I love to play tennis and I love to compete while playing tennis. I mean, even if it's just, friends on a Saturday, I'm winning. So I love to play tennis. I also have a real affinity for dive bars. I just do. They're so fun. So that's something I like to do occasionally. I can't say I've had much time to do it, although at the beginning of the campaign, we were doing cocktails with candidates across the city, which was incredibly fun, and I got to meet so many interesting people that I wouldn't otherwise get the opportunity to meet. So I do like popping around to places that are kind of unexpected, and you find there's lots of really good food in those bars.
Very good. So, thank you. We're going to move to closing statements, and just as we do this, I want to thank everybody, certainly the two candidates, for providing your perspectives to these questions tonight. I want to thank Hawkeye Labor Council and KCRG for partnering with the Economic Alliance on this. Local elections matter in our everyday lives, and being able to provide this kind of access to the people watching here tonight and to our members is really invaluable. So we're going to move to closing statements. We started with Amara at the beginning. We're going to start with Tiffany here for closing statements. You each have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for bringing us together, and I hope Rick is feeling better. I advocate for the choices that voters have in this mayoral election every day. For the last 7 years, I advocated to have, multiple choices for leadership, knowing that we net great results. I also advocate for choosing the best candidate for the job, and I firmly believe I am the right person at the right time. That everything I've done in my life has led me to this spot. Certainly here in Cedar Rapids, everybody knows my ability to communicate. What you might not know is I was telling your stories. I was talking to you for 15 years too, offline. And in the last 7 years, I took an organization that was based here, 1.2 million. It's now a multi-million-dollar leadership organization for women with global reach. We've tripled our staff. We have offices in Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and the Quad Cities. I'm an entrepreneur. I grow things. And I'm also running an extremely nonpartisan campaign that is dedicated to being the party of Cedar Rapids. And I humbly ask for your vote again on November 30th.
And Amara.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you all for tuning in. I ask for your vote on November 30th or before. You could actually go vote tomorrow if you wanted to. A vote for me is a vote for progress, as I have said earlier. My husband and I have been in the Midwest for nearly 15 years. We've been in Cedar Rapids for almost 10, and we are here to stay. We are here to work hard to make Cedar Rapids a great place for all people. My husband has started a small business here in the corridor, and I work for a homegrown Iowa company. We're here to stay, and we're here to work hard to make sure that Iowa lives up to that Cedar Rapids lives up to its potential. With the beautiful river running through downtown, with our robust trades, with our devoted and thriving nonprofit sector, Cedar Rapids is a great place to live. It should be a destination for workers and for families, and that's the vision I have, and I hope that you will vote for me on November 30th.
Thank you, thank you, thank you to both of you for your participation tonight.
Thank you.
And Beth, thank you for partnering with the Economic Alliance tonight. Thanks for being my partner here tonight. I'll let you close it out with the final word.
Well, it has been a joy and a pleasure. Although there were so many debates leading up to the first, this is the only one leading up to November 30th in that 4-week window. And thank you so much on behalf of the Economic Alliance and the Hawkeye Labor Council. Those three organizations work together to make this happen tonight. And thanks, of course, to those of you watching online, watching on 9.2, and those of you in the audience who are very courteous. You all behaved yourselves. That makes our lives so much easier, as well as the candidates. Good luck to everyone, and have a very safe drive home.
From your 24-hour news source, KCRG TV 9,